Oh, hi there, and welcome to my 10.1.7 guide for Frost Death Knight. Embrace the Lich King. Let's get into it. So before we talk about stats, there are technically always two playstyles of Frost in the current version of this game. One is the two-hander version, and the other one is the dual-wielding version. This also means that you have two different stat weights you want to go for, depending on which build you want to play with, or both if you want to play with both, of course. For the sake of argument, the two-hander build is called Obliteration, and the dual-wielding build is called Breath of Sindragosa, all depending on which capstones you take in your talents. For the Obliteration build, you actually want a pretty balanced set of stats. Having roughly equal crit and haste optimizes the number of killing machine procs you have. So crit and haste is very important. Mastery is just a solid damage increase overall, and versatility is something you tend to avoid as much as possible. Now, it's important to note that for Obliteration, you actually have haste breakpoints. The current two breakpoints that are worth mentioning is 12.5% and 25%. Basically, this just adds one additional ability into your Pillar of Frost windows. I would recommend going a few percentage over point to allow for slight ability delay. Specifically for M+, your haste windows will go down by 5% since we use a talent that increases death and decay to give us 5% haste. For Breath of Sindragosa builds or the dual wielding build, it's primarily about crit because it grants us more resources to funnel into our breath windows. Mastery is once again just a straight damage increase, and haste effectively prolongs our breath windows and you don't have a breakpoint. However, going to dual wield build or Breath of Sindragosa build, you will require 100% uptime during your breath windows, which is why a lot of people don't enjoy playing it. Going over our class talents, there isn't going to be a huge change between our Obliteration build and our Breath of Sindragosa build. The only main reason we change into Assimilation is to gain runic power based on the amount we absorb. The damage nodes that you pick up in your class tree is Cleaving Strikes, making it so Obliterate hits 2 additional targets in your Death and Decay, a passive 2% strength increase, a passive 2% crit chance increase, having our auto attacks generate runic power, gain 5% haste while within our Death and Decay, Icy Talons, which grants us melee attack speed. Consuming a rune has a chance to increase our strength and increase the effectiveness of our rune enhancement on our weapons. Now, currently in all builds for Frost Death Knight at the minute, you go for Empower Rune Weapon and Abomination Limb. Defensively and utility-wise, Frost Death Knights are very tanky. You have your innate Death Strike, you have Anti-Magic Shell, you have a flat stamina increase, you have Anti-Magic Zone, you can pick up Unholy Endurance to make your Lichborn into a defensive. We have Icebound Fortitude, which is a nice damage reduction. You also have Blood Draw, so that when you fall below 30% HP, you are draining health from every nearby enemies. Utility-wise, you have a ranged slow, you got your interrupt, you got anti-magic zone, and of course you have your death grips to grip adds in, as well as Abomination Limb, which can also do the same. You are very slow as a Death Knight, which is why Death's Echo is a great option to have. For the sake of the video, all talents will be linked in the description below, but I will start out with going through the Obliteration playstyles of raiding and M+, and then I will go into Breath of Sindragosa builds afterwards. However, do note that the Breath of Sindragosa build is not really a thing in M+, unless you push for high keys like 22s and above, and it requires you to have a coordinated tank so that you can pull around your Breath of Sindragosa windows, otherwise you will do close to tank damage in single target. So some of the major nodes you always want to pick up when playing the Obliteration build is of course Obliteration itself. This makes it so that when our main cooldown Pillar of Frost is active, our Frost Strikes and Howling Blast will always grant Killing Machine. Killing Machine is making our next Obliterate be a guaranteed crit and deal frost damage, which is then further scaled by our Mastery. This makes it so that we are focusing a lot more on these 12 seconds of Pillar of Frost. Basically, Pillar of Frost is a short cooldown, short duration strength buff, and then for each rune we spend while it's active, we gain an additional 2% strength stacking. This also makes it so that with Enduring Strength, we gain a 20% strength buff after our cooldown, and this is then extended for each Obliterate crit we get during our cooldown. On top of that, we get Ice Cap, which makes it so that our Frost Strikes and Obliterate crits reduce the remaining cooldown of Pillar of Frost. So this makes it so that our 1 minute cooldown is generally more like a 40-second cooldown, sometimes lower depending on your crit value, of course. But that's the majority of your damage is going to be within your 12 seconds of a Pillar of Frost. Currently we're picking up Frostworm's Fury. We also pick up Frigid Executioner, which makes it so Obliterate deals more damage and has a chance to refund our runes. Lastly, I want to mention Remorseless Winter. Remorseless Winter is a huge part of our build, simply because every rune that we spend during Remorseless Winter extends its duration and also increases the damage it does. Now, going over Obliteration in Mythic Plus, there's not a whole bunch of changes. However, the major change is that we're speccing out of our second charge of Empower Rune Weapon to pick up Glacial Advance. The other change is that we are taking out 1 point of Enduring Strength to put into Absolute Zero, reducing the cooldown of our Frostworm's Fury. Now, going over the Breath of Sindragosa build, it is very reminiscent of the Obliteration build. However, we are now going down into Breath of Sindragosa. Breath of Sindragosa is basically just you're putting all your damage into your 2 minute window, and then you try to prolong this window as much as possible. With decent gear currently, you can get this duration up to above a minute. We also swap over to Rage of the Frozen Champion, as well as picking up Horn of Winter. The way Breath of Sindragosa works is that it actually just is a continuous drain on your runic power, which means you need to build up runic power to keep it going. The rule of thumb is that you want to be above 60 runic power and have 2 runes before activating Breath of Sindragosa. And from that point onwards, it's just about prolonging this effect as much as possible. This also means that while you have Breath of Sindragosa, you will not be using Frost Strike or Glacial Advance in AoE at any point. So let's go into the core rotation of Frost Death Knight and how it works. In order to fully understand the core of Frost Death Knight, you need to understand we have Rhyme, which is our second most important proc. Basically, whenever we use our Obliterate, we have a chance to make our next Howling Blast consume no runes and deal 300% additional damage. The other proc you want to know about is Killing Machine. Killing Machine is just the chance of making our next Obliterate deal frost damage and crit. Frost Strike will only be used to keep up Unleashed Frenzy and Icy Talons. Or if you're about to cap out on runic power and you don't have any runes, then of course you will Frost Strike. Other than that, it's actually rather simple to go into the core single target rotation. So we want to keep up Remorseless Winter as much as possible. We want to Obliterate if we have more than 4 runes. Then we want to make sure that we use our Rhyme procs and our Killing Machine procs, and Frost Strikes to try and keep our Icy Talons and Unleashed Frenzy to make sure that they don't fall off. Outside of that, it's just about not capping on either runic power or your runes, making sure you always have 3 runes regenerating at all times. And that's actually your base rotation outside of your cooldowns. If there are multiple targets, you drop down a Death and Decay, so your Obliterates hit multiple targets. Now, for your opener in Obliteration, it's honestly quite simple. You want to start out with Abomination Limb as your first thing, because this grants you Rhyme. That's gonna be important later on. So you want to pop Abomination Limb, Remorseless Winter, then you go Empower Rune Weapon, Pillar of Frost, Raise Dead, Howling Blast with your potion and everything else going on, and then you immediately go into your Obliteration window. Your Obliteration window is based upon these 12 seconds of guaranteed Killing Machine procs. We'll make it so that every second ability we use is always going to be an Obliterate with Killing Machine. So it would look something like this. Run in A-Bomb, pop everything, and then go. You want to make sure that you are still using Rhyme before anything else, and that's basically how much damage you're focusing on. You're focusing on getting all of your Obliteration hits in. And as you can see, it's down to a 20-second cooldown. So basically, now that I have Enduring Strength, I want to make sure that I get back into a new Pillar of Frost window. And then we can basically do the same, right? Now we have a lot of resources, so now it's just trying to get as many hits in as we can with Killing Machine procs Obliterates. And that's actually how simple your Obliteration playstyle is, because it's all about Killing Machine procs. They are your top priority, followed by Rhyme, and then Killing Machine. While I'm waiting for my cooldowns to come back, I will just in short explain the difference between single target and AoE. The idea is that you just use Glacial Advance in place of Frost Strike. It is literally that simple, because Howling Blast hits all enemies, Glacial Advance hits all enemies, Death and Decay makes it so our Obliterates hit 3 targets. Our Remorseless Winter hits all enemies. A lot of our natural single target actually does AoE, even our Frostworm's Fury does AoE. So the main difference is just that during your AoE, you're actually just utilizing your Death and Decay in your Pillar of Frost windows, because you want to make sure that you get as many strong killing machine Obliterates out as possible and hitting as many targets as possible. So the question is, what do you then prioritize? Do you prioritize Howling Blast or do you prioritize Glacial Advance when you're not in your cooldown window? You want to prioritize your Howling Blast with Rime when you have Pillar of Frost up and you have your Remorseless Winters ticking and you don't need to refresh your Unleashed Frenzy. Outside of Pillar of Frost, Remorseless Winter, and your Obliteration windows, you actually only want to use Glacial Advance when there are 5+ targets. Otherwise, your Frost Strikes giving you Ice Cap reduction on your Pillar of Frost is actually more important. And for the most part, it's not something you really want to focus too much about, but it's something that can occur when you play the Obliteration build in M+. But for the majority, it's very much the same. You want to keep up your Remorseless Winter, apply Frost Fever with Howling Blast, then go Abomination Limb, Death and Decay, Frost Breath, and then start churning along with as many Frost Strikes as you can in this window, or as many Obliterates as you can in this window. Right? Now we don't have anything going on, we can fire off Frostworm's Fury, freezing all the targets, and then I would actually go for Frost Strikes because we're on low target counts, just to get back faster to our Pillar of Frost. And that's actually your entire AoE rotation, making sure that you have another Death and Decay ready to go with your new Pillar of Frost window. And that's your AoE as Obliteration. Now, Breath of Sindragosa can be played in M+, but I would highly advise against it unless you have a good tank that you are communicating with, so that you can pull around these 2-minute burst windows. During those burst windows, you will do a tremendous amount of damage, but outside of those 2 minutes, you could basically just AFK and just auto-attack the boss, to be honest. Now, our opener as Breath of Sindragosa is very similar to our natural opener with Abomination Limb first, Remorseless Winter. However, this time we're just obliterating twice, using any Rime procs that we get, and then we go Pillar of Frost, Breath of Sindragosa with Raise Dead and our potion, and then we go into our single target priority of Sindragosa. For a single target priority inside Breath of Sindragosa, it's all about generating as much runic power as possible and prolonging the effect. Now, I am not very used to playing with Breath of Sindragosa because I don't enjoy this playstyle as much, but I will do my best to show it off in a somewhat realistic way. So, Abomination Limb, Remorseless Winter, Rime, Obliterate, Pillar of Frost, and go into Breath of Sindragosa. And at this point, it's just trying to build up as many things as we can and trying to keep it up as much as we can, right? I still have it going somehow, and there I lost it. So I didn't do a very good job of it. To be fair, I'm not very highly geared on this character, but that's the general idea, is that you want to make sure that you get as many Obliterates and Rimes in as you can in each window. Basically, you want a runic power if you're below 30 runic power, or if you have a killing machine proc, then it's Rime or Howling Blast with Rime, and then it's Remorseless Winter, and then Obliterate outside of runic power and runes, right? Now we could go into another Pillar of Frost and do the whole rotation once again. You always want to make sure that you can actually pool up enough resources for a new Breath of Sindragosa. Now, if I had more crit, I would have been able to prolong the Breath of Sindragosa for way longer, but still, it was a decent amount of my damage. But yeah, that's actually all there is to say about Frost Death Knight. It's extremely fun. I prefer the two-handed playstyle, but some people who want to do min-maxing stuff can definitely get a lot out of Breath of Sindragosa. However, losing just a tiny bit of uptime really hampers your damage, so take that with a grain of salt. Outside of that, I hope that you'll subscribe, and see you on the next one. Bye!